Hope you enjoyed your trip. Sounds like this trip did wonders. Yeah, chief whips are not wearing ties. They are not in the... Except for Honorable Frolic, is wearing a tie. And Mr. Singh. Are you always uptight? Oh, God. Well, you needed gloves in London, definitely, I'm quite sure. Okay, welcome. And of course, our agenda, as always, contains the main items. Let's just quickly go to the minutes of the meeting of the 23rd November.
Madam Speaker.
Oh, are there any apologies? Let's start with the Honorable Singh.
Madam Speaker, good morning. Thank you and compliments of the new year to everybody. I just thought under item 2, there's the issue of the high-level panel presentations and that was made to us last year. And I think there was going to be some feedback on it, and probably it'll involve programming of how we deal with these recommendations.
Okay.
And the second issue, Madam Speaker, is there was an issue last year, I think towards the end of last year, of the Ethics Committee and the Minister of Intelligence. I don't know how far they've progressed with that matter. Thank you.
Okay. Before I entertain your issues, can we just take apologies? Were there any apologies? Honorable Steenhuisen?
Madam Speaker, thank you. The Deputy Chief Whip of the party, Mr. Waters, and Honourable Mazzoni.
Okay. Any other apologies, Chief Whip?
Thank you, Speaker. The Deputy Chief Whip of the majority party is off sick.
Okay. Honourable Mente?
Thank you, Speaker. Chief Whip of the EFF and Hlengwa Mkhalip.
Okay. Deputy Speaker and Dr. Koronov have apologized. Okay, now we get to the items raised by Honorable Singh, the issue of the high-level panel, as well as the question of a matter that's supposed to be before the Ethics Committee. I don't know whether there's a particular report on that. However, that matter as well. Could we then perhaps quickly get to those items? On the high-level panel, you will remember that there was a meeting convened in the old Assembly chamber at the end of the year. We then had thought that having received the gist of the various matters before the high-level panel, we had to agree ourselves as members of Parliament on a clearinghouse type mechanism that would then enable us to take the various issues in whatever best way we thought we could. Mr. Klaso, I don't know whether you just want to shed more light on how close we are to finalizing that matter, because I think you had a couple of options.
There are two issues. The one is the process, and in terms of the process, as the Speaker has indicated, there is this sense that there ought to be a clearinghouse. Now, there are two options there. We can either make it as formal as like an ad hoc committee or a task team with a House resolution, or there's agreement that it be a task team established by the Joint Rules Committee, which would then be that clearinghouse. But in terms of the substance of the report, we had already started going through the recommendations, and we have grouped them into what we consider to be short-term, medium-term, and long-term. We have also identified the committees that these could go to. But that's an administrative exercise which has to be assessed politically in terms of what ought to be done with the recommendations of the report. We're also asked to look at the impact of the report on the programming, business of Parliament, and also on such programs as the public participation model, which is work that will be ready shortly to report on. So, ma'am, I think the issue of the process would need guidance there. Two options: a task team of the Joint Rules Committee as a clearinghouse, or an ad hoc committee. But you also don't want to. You want to avoid rerunning the process that was undertaken by the panel itself. So I think one will have to consider those issues. Thanks.
Honorable Steenhuisen.
Madam Speaker, thanks very much. Just at the outset, I think it also just highlights a problem that we have with the structure of Parliament at the moment. You'll remember that prior to the implementation of the FMPLA, we had an oversight mechanism for Parliament that would deal with, you know, the sort of broad brushstroke issues that related to Parliament. What was it? What was it called again? The oversight mechanism that used to the POA. The POA, since the creation of the oversight mechanism, has collapsed into that. However, the focus of the oversight mechanism seems to now feel that it's exclusively on the finances and budgets and annual plan of Parliament. So we don't have now anymore a committee that would, you know, oversee the broad structure of Parliament, which would have been ideal to process a report like this in the first instance. So that's a problem we're going to have to address going forward. I mean, what's happened to all the outstanding matters from the POA that the oversight mechanism feels it doesn't need to deal with because it falls outside the financial management of Parliament. But I think that before going to committees, I think I would agree with Mr. Tosso, and we did have a discussion yesterday, and the Honourable Dediza, if I recall, proposed that we have some form of forwarding clearing committee that would then assess the report in its broad sense and have a look at what's important, what's not, what's doable within the remaining time of this life of this Parliament, and then, you know, focuses on that, and then more importantly is able to parcel out the work to the portfolio committees, because you don't want a committee then, you know, duplicating or subjugating the work of a portfolio committee, particularly when it comes to the high-level panel report. There's some stuff on the economy, there's stuff on land reform, bills that need to be repealed, etc. And so I think that it would probably lend itself more to an ad hoc committee, which I imagine would be convened by you, Madam Speaker. But I mean, I definitely think that before it gets parcelled out to the portfolio committees, there should be an analysis of the report in its entirety, and that assessment is done. But it does also, I think, highlight the dilemma now that we have with the transition from the POA to the oversight mechanism. And then just to remind you, Madam Speaker, that we did have an agreement in the was it the Joint Rules Committee, that we would review the public engagement and oversight and accountability model, also in light of the report of the high-level panel.
I think clearly a Joint Rules Committee has to sit soon. There's no doubt about that. Even if this report was not there, we do need, as we are entering the year before the elections, because there's a number of issues that would have to also be channeled towards informing the main issues of a legacy report that we must formulate before the end of the year. But I saw your hand, Honourable Singh. I would like us to comment on what Honourable Steenhuisen has put before us. Honourable Singh, Honourable Dediza.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I think the suggestions by Mr. Kaso are valid. I would rather we go for a joint task team because it's going to involve both houses. The ad hoc committee is more confined to the National Assembly. but a joint task team which can serve the same purpose of being a clearinghouse, identifying the issues and referring them to respective portfolio committees or select committees to deal with. So some mechanism to have a joint task team with the NCOP. Thank you.
Honorable Titiza.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I will concur with Honorable Singh that maybe instead of an ad hoc committee, it should be a joint task team. It would actually be assisted with the work that is already done, because I'm sure from the administrative side, not only did they look at short, medium to long term, but also in the analysis of that report to look at what are the policy matters, what are the legislative issues, and what are those that require the executive, so that in the packaging, when the task team look at it, also take those into consideration. But the prioritization as well as what are those that are immediate that we can deal with, that would not upset, entirely the institution given the time frame that we are left with. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Chief Whip.
Now, I will concur with the introduction of a joint task team, again, on the basis of what already has been put before the House. Of course, I think at the back of our mind, Honourable Speaker, we should be asking ourselves a question. When you commission any investigation as the Speaker, how do we take forward such? Whatever mechanism we put in place, it must be futuristic. It must be able to tell us when we have a commission that we have commissioned or Parliament has commissioned, how do we take such reports forward? And I think that this will be the best mechanism of taking such reports forward. And thank you very much.
I think let's agree then that our intention is to very soon put together a joint task team so that it assists us to look at the main issues coming out of the report of the high-level panel. But I again would like to remind us that we should not forget a main matter and issue that had been identified and raised by the legacy report from the fourth Parliament. And that was put in terms of how best we understand the impact of past legislation we, as Parliament, from the first Parliament up to now, have passed. So that question must be answered in the process of the work that's going to be done by the joint task team. What's the report saying in answering that specific question? So that we don't get lost in the issues, but we also answer the specific question that the fourth Parliament had identified for us through this mechanism of a panel that we formed as the legislative sector to say, of necessity, we have to clear our minds. Have we been passing legislation that has been meaningless? Has it been helpful? What is our understanding? Okay, now there is also the question raised by Honorable Singh, the second issue of the Ethics Committee. I think let's just say we'll bring a report on that. We have to find out what has happened. Can we go to the minutes of the 23rd? And I take the minutes as read. Are there any corrections honorable members want to make on the minutes? And welcome, Deputy Speaker. I must say, Honorable Frolik was very attentive before the Deputy Speaker came. Honorable Stenese.
Sorry, Madam Speaker, I didn't know we'd moved past item 2 yet. I do just want to make a few brief comments and receive some feedback around SONA. So I don't know where you want to fit that in. Do you want to do it under the program, maybe? Yes. Okay, no problem.
Item 7. Okay, corrections to the minutes, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Seeing as you chaired that meeting. Okay, if there are no corrections to the minutes anywhere, may I have a motion for their adoption as a correct record? Honorable Chief Whip. Chief Whip moves. Is there a seconder? Honorable Singh. And there is no one against the adoption, so the minutes have been duly adopted. Are there any particular matters arising? Mr. Klaso?
Ma'am, there was a decision that a work study be conducted on the legislative process. That process is underway, and in the next 2 weeks, the report will be ready for submission, initially to this committee and eventually to the Joint Program Committee.
Honorable Mente and Honorable Singh.
Okay, Speaker, on the issue which was raised about the state capture, which was 4 committees that were requested to deal with the state capture, and House Chairperson Frodek was going to bring us a report as to how far is the progress on those 4 committees, because there's only one committee at this present moment which deals with the state capture.
Honorable Singh.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. On page 2, the question of the ad hoc committee on PARMED, if we can just have some progress on that, because it's becoming quite a serious issue. Honorable Speaker, I don't know. I don't look at my salary slip very closely, but suggestions are that PARMED's increased by 12% and 14%. 14%. Our salary increase was 4.5%. And there's justification for 4.5, I don't know how. But I think this is a serious issue, and we need to address this PARMED issue, at least in the first half of this year, and finalize it. Thank you.
I wish the Deputy Speaker was in the room. Welcome back, Deputy Speaker. There's an issue here that has just been raised by Honorable Singh that requires your specific attention. Can you repeat, Honorable Singh?
Yeah.
Not only that, it goes beyond.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I think there'll be a bit of a conflict of interest here with the Deputy Speaker, because he chairs the PARMED board. But, and the whole concern is about PARMED and it being the continued service provider, medical aid provider to us members of Parliament. We note that there's been an increase of 14% in the subscriptions that we pay, and this is becoming a very hot issue because our increase was not commensurate with that. And besides that, you know, I think for over a year or 2 years now, other political parties have been agitating that we have freedom to choose our own medical aid. And there's an ad hoc committee that we established last year. That ad hoc committee needs to start functioning, and maybe the administration can tell us how far we are in terms of formally constituting that body so it can get on with its work. Thank you.
Honourable Speaker, I was going to say that it would be good to get from the administration to what extent have we established the committee, to what extent is that committee operational, so that if we have not played our part as parties by bringing members to serve in that committee, then we are told so that we can activate ourselves on the matter.
Madam Speaker.
Okay, the committee section must talk about that. Honorable Chief Whip, Honorable, maybe before you, Deputy Speaker, I'm sorry, Chief Whip, Honorable Didiza, and then Honorable Chief Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Speaker. I was going to suggest that given that the issue of permit touches members on both sides, it's important to make sure that that committee has NCOP. But I also wanted to bring in a factor that if you look at the legislation as it stands, it actually covers members of parliament. At the time at which it was crafted, it didn't actually cover legislatures. But legislatures, for them to participate, had to make a resolution of their houses to be part of the scheme. So even if they want to exit, they will do the same. And I'm just saying that given the pressures on members with respect to the increases, it might be important that committee works first, because what we might just find is that legislatures can actually take resolutions to opt out. And if that happens, the pressure on the size of the scheme become even more, pertinent, and the members who have left and continued with the scheme will even be more affected. So I'm just emphasizing that that committee really has to work as fast as it could, because some of the things may not be in our hands to manage, given the nature of how that legislation was crafted.
And let's also remember judges are part of the scheme, and and continuation members have a different experience from ours. Continuation members find the scheme a Rolls Royce. Yes? Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Others will subsidize you when you are no longer here. Madam Speaker was saying others will subsidize all of us when we are no longer here. But the point I want to make, Madam Speaker, is the following, that I think to speak as chair of the board, there are processes that we undertook. Firstly, to examine the nature of the beast. In other words, who else is doing what in the medical environment, so that we can bring to brief the committee that's going to be in place about that work that was done, a comparison. But secondly, also, we have had 2 presentations from the minister on the work that they've been doing on the health environment, including apparently we might be, I don't know how soon, to get the market inquiry that the Minister of Health and the Competition Commission came to agreement about, which came about precisely as a result of the expensive nature of health that emerged after doing away with a structure that used to control and manage pricing. So that report, we think, is going to serve as a useful one in considerations that the committee is going to have to do. The third related point is that the department itself, having worked through and published the National Health Insurance, there are implications for medical schemes as a whole. We belong to a group of about 29 medical schemes that are small, for which the ministry and department has a view given the direction of the National Health Insurance. And so they have recommendations about what we should do, how we should go about it, and so on. And that too will serve on the committee. We will present that report to the committee so that the committee operates on the basis of that, the most current information and direction that medical scheme trajectory is going to be after and in the process of implementing the National Health Insurance. And I think that briefing session will go a long way. The remuneration agenda for public representative is at the heart of the problem that we are talking about. So that one really belongs elsewhere. We have no control over it as the board, and including the question of the legislation. Part of the hesitancy around, for example, opening up space was for fear of the immediate impact on the scheme. So we have to be sure of what's going to come out if we do that, even as we do the process of changes that we anticipate. But those are things that we will report on once the committee is set up as part of the work that must inform the work of that committee. Thanks.
Please don't take that example. Because what I want is the committee section to tell us, when are we having this committee?
Yeah, look, I was about to suggest that, I mean, I don't think we should start doing the work of the committee. And I think that the Deputy Speaker's made some interesting points, and of course there's counterpoints to that. For instance, Discovery's 2018 increase was 7.9%. Why does ours have to be 14%? So, those are the things that they must interrogate. But I just want to say, I don't think we can do the work of the committee. I think that's why we've agreed it must be established.
I think you are rethinking, Honorable Member.
Now, I just want to emphasize on the committee to be, at least, to start working as soon as possible, because the impact that this has in reality, let alone the fact that the other side is of profit, in reality is that our children are not on the scheme. We cannot afford at this current juncture. Even our spouses are not. We cannot afford to cover them. That's a reality. And if ever this is moving at a very tortuous pace, it's going to hit us hard.
Committee section, both on your report, but maybe you want to just start with this and then move on to your report.
Okay, morning, Honorable Speaker, morning, Honorable Members. To start with this one, I can confirm that in the NA, the committee was established as a joint ad hoc committee to include members of the NCOP, and that the date that was given for the committee to do and conclude its work is the 30th of March this year. We are still waiting for the NCOP to establish their part of the ad hoc committee, and I'm made to believe that it's priority. So hopefully, as soon as the NCOP sits, that part of the committee will be established and we will be able to proceed accordingly. What we're doing administratively in the meantime, Speaker, is to send letters to parties, which parties should receive before the end of business today, requesting names of members to form a part of this committee. So that's the work that we're doing, and we're still working on the 30th of March as per the resolution of the House. Excuse me, if I may then proceed with our report. Please, we beg for indulgence. It's going to be slightly longer because we'll be reporting on work of committees since the last meeting. And our report will also touch on matters that have lapsed. And we will make sure that we don't necessarily go through each and every slide that does not necessarily have updates. If you look at our report, we're starting on slide number 4 on the Communications Committee work on Films and Publications Amendment Bill. The committee finalized its work on this bill on the 21st of November. The next reporting slide is slide number 7, the Insurance Bill before the Committee on Finance, the same date of the 21st of November when the committee finalized its work. Before Portfolio Committee on International Relations, there's a Foreign Services Bill that the committee intends finalizing on the 28th of February. That date is still provisional. And we do have a program under current status, how the committee is going to proceed towards the 28th of February. If you look at slide number 10, before the Portfolio Committee on Police, we're reporting on a Critical Infrastructure Protection Bill. The committee will finalize its work on this bill on the 21st of February. The upland public hearings that took place on the 30th and the 31st of January. There'll be further deliberations on the dates that are set out there for February, and then the matter will again be finalized on the 21st of February. Slide number 11, Science and Technology, National Research Foundation Amendment Bill. The committee will finalize this bill on the 14th of March. You'll note that there are public hearings that are planned for the 21st and the 22nd of February, and other activities that are planned until the 14th of March. Moving along to slide number 14, before the Portfolio Committee on Transport, reporting on Road Accident Benefit Scheme Bill. Stakeholder engagement is planned for the dates that are reflected there in February, and the response by the department to public comments to be scheduled, and the committee will schedule further. Currently, we do not have an aim to finish date with regards to this bill. We're reporting again for record that the Refugees Amendment Bill before Home Affairs was finalized on the 23rd of November, so we'll be reporting for the last time in this committee on this bill. If you look at slide 16, 17, and 18, we have 3 new legislation before the Portfolio Committee on Labour: Basic Conditions of Employment Amendment Bill, National Minimum Wage Bill, and Labour Relations Amendment Bill. These bills have got a program, starting with a briefing that took place yesterday, the 31st, a briefing by Legal Department and Content Support, deliberations. There is, however, no aim to finish date with regards to all 3 of these bills, and the committee will update the program and indicate, hopefully, by the next meeting. We are reporting again on public enterprises on slide number 19, a new bill that was referred on the 8th of December, a repeal of Offerfall Resorts Limited Bill. The committee is to schedule. There is no program yet with regards to this bill. Slide number 21, date to finish National Forests Amendment Bill is the 27th of February. This bill before Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. Slide number 24, Marine Special Planning Bill was finalized on the 22nd of November. And then we move to slide 25, National Environment Management Laws Amendment Bill before Environmental Affairs. A committee is to advertise on the 2nd of February, and then schedule further activities and a date to complete its work on this bill. We report on slide number 27 on the National Public Health Institute of South Africa bill. Date of finalization is yet to be confirmed. The dates of deliberations are included there under status containing plans of the committee going forward. Rural Development, Communal Property Associations Amendment Bill. There are further deliberations that took place on the 30th and the 31st and also continuing today. There is still no aim to finish a date with regards to this bill. Slide number 30, National Land Transport Amendment Bill before Transport. No aim to finish on this bill. There are deliberations, however, that are continuing until the 30th of February, and the committee will update its program and indicate when we will finalize this bill. The Expropriation Bill, Speaker, before Public Works. The committee held a workshop on the 30th of January on this bill to consider inputs from the National House of Traditional Leaders and other inputs coming from public comments. And the committee is going to revise its program, reschedule, and we will advise the committee as soon as we have a new program to deal with this particular bill. National Health Laboratory Services Bill before the Portfolio Committee on Health on slide number 32. We have further deliberations up until the 14th of March. The date of conclusion is to be finalized by the committee. Before Portfolio Committee on Transport, the South African National Roads Agency Limited and National Roads Amendment Bill. There's a briefing that is planned by the department on the 13th of March, and after the briefing, the committee will confirm its program going forward. We have included on slide number 36 to 37 a program to consider the budget process, coordinating activities of both houses. I will not speak to the program in detail. It includes meetings of the 4 statutory committees towards conclusion and adoption of the budget process by the NCOP. We continue to slide number 39, where we are updating that there are further meetings that are scheduled on the 6th, 7th, and the 14th of February on the matter before the Committee on Finance regarding legislation review. On slide number 40, the new independent regulatory board for auditors, the Standing Committee on Finance finalized its work on the 13th of September last year, so we're reporting for the last time on this particular work of the committee. Slide number 14, other matters before committees on the work of funding of political parties. The committee finalized its work here on the 28th of November. If you look at slides 43 to 47, I will not go through them, Speaker. There are updates there on petitions before committees. And that concludes our report. Thank you for your indulgence again.
Thank you, committee section. Honorable Steenhuisen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, just three matters I want to deal with. The first is, are we going to get a list of lapsed business that needs to be revived? Because we would have to try and do that as soon as possible in the, when we reconvene in the House, so that we can go through it and revive that work. It would be terribly wasteful to have let all the work that's gone by on stuff lapse. The second thing is the budget process that's set out. Has that been checked against all the relevant legislation and deadlines and directives in terms of the legislation and guidelines from Treasury, etc., to make sure that we are absolutely compliant this year with both the budget process and then the adjustment budget process later this year? Because, as you would know, we've had a concern over the last 2 financial years that there's been a little compliance with the spirit of it. And then the third then is any constitutional deadlines that we are up against this year, constitutional court judgments, directives to Parliament to act. I think it's important that we, as soon as possible, get a list of those, if there are any, so that we can start ensuring that we program the work going forward. Again, Madam Speaker, there's 39 pieces of legislation, is it, that are before it? 29 pieces of legislation. We need a plan about how we're going to process it. We need a plan now at the beginning of the year. We need to be realistic about what we can achieve in this particular year, given the fact that I imagine that closer to the end of the year, things are going to start getting a little bit busier in other spheres of our lives. And so we need to, I think, make sure that we prioritize what we need to do and then focus like a laser beam on making sure that we sit enough to be able to get that legislation through. The output last year on legislation particularly was very, very low. And I'm sure the executive are frustrated by that, and I think it was one of our key pieces of that we're tasked to do is to pass legislation. So I just ask that we are upfront with each other at the beginning of the year about what we can actually realistically achieve by the end of the year, given the fact that I assume that in a month's time there may be some new legislation and new priorities and new bills that start to emanate from the executive.
Honorable Singh.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. A break just tends to cause some selective amnesia, so there might be some memory loss here when I raise this matter. But as I can recall, last year the ad hoc committee on the funding of political parties presented a report which was tabled in the House, accepted by the House, and I think we also tabled a bill arising out of the work of that ad hoc committee, and we had concluded our work. I'd just like to know where to from here with regard to that bill that was placed before the House. Thank you.
Honorable Frolik.
Well, thank you, Honourable Speaker. Just before Mr. Chabalala respond to the specifics, I want to indicate that usually what we do at the beginning of the year is to identify the business that needs to be revived before the House, and the Chief Whip is usually the one that deals with that, and such a motion will be moved in the House. There is a number of pieces of legislation that has been completed last year, but it was not put in front of the House yet, so that will be done. There's also a large number of legislation that will be completed in February and also in March this year, so there's definitely movement that has taken place. May I also add, Honourable Speaker, that the committee chairpersons have been requested to provide us with the exact dates in terms of their aim to finish targets that they are setting for themselves, keeping in mind that due to sometimes in the public participation processes and other processes, those dates are not cast in stone and it can be moved around. And it will definitely assist us, and it will probably happen after the Cabinet Logotla, when we hear from the Leader of Government Business what the intended list of legislation is that they would want Parliament to consider this year.
Honorable Burato.
Thank you, Speaker. I just want to be reminded of the cut-off date for introduction of bills, looking at the year ahead. Because if we have a cut-off date, what if there are bills that comes after that? Are we going to have a mechanism of dealing with them, or what are we going to do? Thanks.
Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. We discussed last year that the leader of government business, as Honorable Frolik is saying here, in consultations will bring to us indications after we communicated our anxiety about legislation clogging the system this year, that they would come back to us to give us an indication of where that process is. I think we must remember that that work was done. In other words, we would want to get feedback from there to feed into these processes that we are talking about. It is already a question of following up on those things. So that is what it should inform how we approach it, implementing decisions that has already been taken. Thanks, Madam Speaker.
I think we did last year talk about the fact that it is not desirable to have a large volume of a legislative program in this year. And so, in fact, it simply is not desirable because we know the limitations. We know that there is a general tendency from the executive to wait till the last minute and then for us to have a large volume coming through and us being expected to perform miracles. And of course, knowing that part of the process of passing legislation is to ensure that on the NCOP side, there must be public hearings and people's views are sought on the ground in the provinces. And we usually get into trouble at that level when it comes to legislation ending up before courts and courts returning it to Parliament because the constitutional requirements have not been fulfilled. So it really is not a good idea for us to have a lot of pieces of legislation later this year. But let's hear the response from the committee section on the specific questions.
Thank you, Speaker. I'll request legal services to respond to the issue of constitutional court deadlines that have particular importance for this year, and the Bill's office to talk to the issue of cut-off dates, in addition to the responses that have been given. With regards to the program to deal with the budget process, I can confirm that it is part of a coordinated planning between the 4 statutory committees on appropriations and finance. And with the advice that the committees have been given, we believe that technically the dates, the timelines follow the processes that are set out in applicable legislation. It's more or less a progress, rather a program that looks more like what we had last year, with the minor challenges that were there that are receiving attention from those committees as well, Chairperson. But if there are any inputs, I'm sure we can take them and take them back to the committee for consideration.
Okay, thank you.
With your permission, I'll request then my colleagues to speak to the other issues. Thank you, ma'am.
The legal office.
Thank you. Good morning, members. I will do a full presentation on constitutional court deadlines for the committee next week. What I can confirm is that the one deadline in September this year, we are briefing the committee this afternoon on a possible committee bill. So I think that will be quite doable. But that is, in other words, under control. So there's nothing at this point in time that is a red flag, but I will do a full briefing to the committee on what the Constitutional Court deadlines are and where we are in progress in respect of those matters. I'll be prepared for next week. Thank you.
Okay. Maybe we should now move to the Bill's office for their report, but also for responding and giving clarification on any of the issues arising from the recent discussion. But just before you come on, Bill's office, Deputy Speaker.
Madam Speaker, it's inappropriate that we receive an ad hoc report on the Constitutional Court judge issues. We took a decision here that quarterly, last year, in programming, that we must receive a report on where we are with cases, including Constitutional Court cases. And I don't understand why it has not been implemented. Even in the last quarter last year, we are supposed to have received that report. So I just think that that decision be implemented without hesitation. It must be an ongoing report that we receive. It's about court cases, those that have been concluded, those that are upcoming, and so on. So can we just implement a decision that program into? I just want to make that appeal to the legal section.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Please proceed. Bill's office.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My report will deal briefly with issues raised here before me. I've highlighted for your benefit the bills that were introduced after this committee last sat in 2017. One of which is a 2018 bill, Public Investment Corporation Amendment Bill, which is a private member's bill. Madam Speaker, a bit has been said about the bills that have lapsed. I've indicated these on the statistics document that we circulated yesterday. In brief, there are 4: Marine Spatial Planning, Films and Publications Amendment Bill, Red Tape Impact Assessment, and indeed the Political Party Funding Bill. They've lapsed because they've been on the order paper for consideration, so in terms of the National Assembly rules, they have lapsed. They can be revived. I have seen that 2 of them are provisionally already on the order paper for second reading, so it looks to me as though there is a process in place to get them revived. Madam Speaker, I also distributed yesterday a list of bills passed in 2018 by Parliament, by both houses, and submitted for assent. There was a number of...
Passed in 2018.
2017.
Which 2018, sir?
2018 minus 1 is... It's... Madam Speaker, there was a total of 18, and all 18 of them have been signed into law by the President, and I've indicated the dates concerned and the Government Gazette number which accompany them. Madam Speaker, yes, LOGB, we will be in contact with them to see when we can receive a list of bills that they intend bringing to Parliament for introduction and maybe for completion. Then lastly, Madam Speaker, the issue of parliamentary deadlines is not an easy one. It hasn't been done for the last few years. The issue of a parliamentary deadline for introduction of bills to be passed in the same year emanated from the early 2000s, and the agreement between us was that a bill introduced by the deadline will be passed by Parliament, all things being equal. Now, of course, all things are not equal, because one bill is 100 pages and the next one is 1. One is highly political and one is technical, etc. One goes to a very busy committee, another one goes to a committee that hardly ever deals with legislation. So there's that to keep in mind. Also, Madam Speaker, if I may say so, our limited experience in the past has been that if Parliament undertakes to pass bills in a specific year that's introduced by a certain date, it very seldom works, because bills that come to Parliament that are urgent tend to miss the deadline because of the controversial nature and because of the time frames imposed on it. So in that respect, it may be counterproductive. It's not for me to decide. Lastly, the other issue about the NCOP, maybe it's not a bad idea to start when a deadline is determined and when internal timeframes are determined, to start working back and ask the NCOP first, how much time do you need? And what do you need to build in to cater for unforeseen circumstances? And then, based on what the NCOP tells us, then we can start looking at the appropriate or realistic date for NA to pass legislation. That's all for now. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I don't think it can be counterproductive for us to take a position to enable us to do what is absolutely necessary for us to do in a particular year, knowing that the lifespan of the 5th term is coming to an end halfway, in fact, before halfway through the next year. And therefore, we have to look into the detail of this matter. Honorable Steenhuisen.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Speaker. And I hear what you're saying, and I think that it's, I would agree with you. And, you know, I've always been a proponent of us being realistic at the beginning of the year about what we can achieve, because then we've got a way of measuring ourselves and our output during the year to see where we are against those predetermined criteria. Obviously, from time to time, bills will come out, but I think that we're going to find ourselves in a unique situation this year, because I think we're going to end up with a whole host of new legislation emerging in the next month or two, or further down the line, and you know, and I think there's going to be a drive to stamp a new agenda or a new program of action, new policy direction. But that's just a suspicion that I have. So I think that quite the opposite. I think this year is going to see us having a flurry of legislation. So I think what we need to do is I think you as Speaker need to embark upon a engagement process with the leader of government business, which I'm sure you have a regular meeting with him, and just express to him the programming committee's concerns and try and get some commitment from him for some form of prioritization, so that we can, you know, if there's bills that are no longer going to be a priority that are on our books, we must withdraw them. If there's new priorities that are going to come out from the executive, we need to have a look at how we can make sure that we can process that legislation by the end of the year. But I think that we are being very optimistic if we think we can, you know, set a cut-off date, and the executive sausage factory is not going to be pushing out bills towards us during the year.
Honorable Singh.
Thank you.
Honorable Titiza.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's arising from the report of Mr. Bell. These lapsed, so-called lapsed bills, I mean, when are we going to put a process in place? You said there is some process. What is the process, and how do we bring them back onto the table as quickly as possible? Usual channels. I'm speaking in particular, Honourable Speaker, on the political party funding bill, that it's very urgent that we consider this bill. Elections are on the corner. It's going to have an impact on funding for political parties and the formula. There was sufficient consensus at the ad hoc committee on the way forward. I'm saying sufficient consensus, and I'm looking here. And I'd just like to know which committee is going to handle this particular bill moving forward. Thank you.
Honorable Titiza, and then the Honorable Chief Whip.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think when Honorable Frolik was commenting earlier on, he did indicate that for those bills that have lapsed, they will follow the process where the Chief Whip will have to make the motion in the House. And I'm sure the earliest sitting, that's when all those can be revived. Just in jest, I wanted to say to Honorable Steenhuisen, I am more optimistic than him that the year will go on fairly well. Whatever happens is still the same party. We haven't gone to any elections. So, yeah. But be that as it may, I agree with him that what is important probably would be engagement with the leader of government business to share with them already what is on our plate and sensitize them that, you know, it would be advisable that no new legislation that are really not critical should be brought into the legislative space. However, we'll also need to factor in the process of the NCOP, which follows a different route than ours, because on some, they go to the provinces, which does add into the timing and timelines that we would wish for. So those are some of the considerations that we must factor in when we do that planning. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Honorable Chief Whip, and I think I'll have to ask somebody to take over the chair. I do have a media briefing in a very short while.
You do have a deputy speaker.
Yes. But I would have wanted him to be coming with me. But please continue, Chief Whip.
Thank you. Now, just on the issue, colleagues, we know what happens, by the way. We should not be pretending that we don't know what happens to lapsed business. We know. We have been here for many, many years. So if there's lapsed business that we are still interested in, we just bring it to the House and it is revived, which we will. On the matter that Honorable Singh has raised, political party funding, the only issue there is which committee. Indeed, as we bring the matter to the House, we might even suggest that we revive the committee that dealt with the matter. So that's a very easy question to answer. It's the same composition, same members to take forward the matter that they had started. Because indeed, when the committee reported, it's being also expired. So we can revive that committee as well to take forward that matter. I'm not sure where Steenhuisen get this notion. Oh, sorry.
He knows something you don't know.
Where Honorable Steenhuisen get this notion that we'll have more bills coming to the House. It's still the same party, just had a conference last year. It's the same party that is governing. Same priorities. Priorities have not changed. Indeed, we might be a little bit focused, but it's the same party. We don't have a different party that will now be governing. It's the ANC that will still be governing. Thank you very much.
Leave the New Deal to America.
Speaker, I was
Draft parliamentary program. Yes, sorry, Honorable Titiza.
Through you, Speaker, I was going to suggest that since you need the deputy with you, maybe Honorable Frolic can chair for the remainder of the meeting.
Okay, Honorable Frolic, please come to the chair, because I know definitely Honorable Steenhuisen has an issue under this item.
The programming op will take us through the parliamentary program.
Thank you, Chair. I will start by what is going to happen. That is today. Today at 2 o'clock, we'll be having the NA Rules Committee, same venue. The venue in which we are finding ourselves in. Yes, indeed, many issues have been raised regarding the bills that are before us, about 29 bills before the NA and the NCOP 12 and lapsed business. That then is going to inform our program as from now onwards. If we're to move now to the next page, that is the date, starting on the 5th, page 6, starting on the 5th of February to the 8th. Items are as appearing on the program, but on the 8th is the State of the Nation address. Then if we move on to page 7, that is the date starting from the 12th, we're having the debate on the President's State of the Nation address, that is the 13th and the 14th, and the reply is on the 15th. Then moving on to page 8, Page 8, the date is starting from the 19th to the 22nd. This is where, indeed, as the Chief Whip indicated earlier on, that we'll be reviving all the lapsed business, which we are currently working on. We did in the Chief Whip's forum yesterday also requested that we also consider that is the condolence motion for the late Honorable Lalu Chiba, was a former member of this House. Then kindly take note also that on the same day we'll be having the members' motion by the EFF, whereby we're anticipating their topic. Then on the 21st, we are having our budget speech, then that is the appropriation bill, the introduction thereof, and the division of the revenue bill is going to be tabled on that day. Then moving on to the 9th page, the date then would then start from the 22nd. We are having the committee reports. You know, we'll be dealing with those matters and we'll be finalizing what we're going to be putting in our program. Then on the 27th, those lapsed business, that is those lapsed bills will be scheduled on that particular day, in particular, the Marine Special Planning Bill, the report and the second reading debate, and also the report on the Portfolio Committee on Communication, Films and Publications, the report and the second reading debate will be taking place on that day, and then the ANC motion is going to take place on that particular day. Then Wednesday, the 28th, we're having questions to the Deputy President. 1st of March as is. Then on the 6th of March, we're having the members' motion, the IFP. Then moving on to the 7th, we have the peace and security, that is questions for oral reply on that particular day, and the consideration of the fiscal framework and revenue proposals, 2018, and of the report of the Silicon Finance thereon. Then on the 8th of March, we're having the questions to the President. We've just currently put that as provisional. We still need confirmation thereof. Then on the 13th of March, we are having the members' motion, that is the UDM. Then moving on to page 13. Page 13, starting from the 14th, there are questions to the Deputy President. Then on the 15th, the second reading debate, division of revenue bill. Then as we did discuss this matter again in the Chief Whip's Forum, that we propose that we have the debate on the Human Rights Day, because Wednesday, the 21st, is a holiday, which is the following week. There, we go to page 14 from the 19th to the 23rd, and also moving to the 26th to the 29th is the committee week and oversight, and the constituency period starts on the 3rd to the 16th of April. That is my report, Chairperson. Thank you.
No, thank you, Honourable Bengu. Let's get back to the first week. And let me ask if there are any questions of clarity or interventions. The Honourable Sienason, followed by the Honourable Mente.
I'm sorry the speaker's left, because I think she's the only person who could help me with my, my particular area of concern. And colleagues will know I raised it at the Chief Whip's Forum yesterday, and that's around the State of the Nation address. Now, I accept that this is not scheduled by the Speaker. It's the President summons the joint houses. But I really think I would like to put on the table our concern around us proceeding with this, given the fact that it's very obvious that there could well be a change in senior leadership in the presidency in the coming weeks and months. And essentially what this State of the Nation address is where the President sets out the program of his and his executive for the year. If that is likely to change, it means that us sitting there for 3 hours, 4 hours on the day, listening to a program that may well not be the one that's implemented later in the year, begs us the question whether it's worth us proceeding given the costs of SONA. Now, I know there's some confusion doing the rounds about the real cost of SONA. Let's be clear. Parliament spent 4 million. The SAPS, Public Works, and others, including the State Security Agency, spent amounts, and these are parliamentary questions, and I'm happy to provide the information to anybody in the room who'd like them, because we received them last year, brought the cumulative cost into just under 11 million rand, 10.98 million rand. So this is a significant amount of money that's spent on hosting the SONA, and if we are going to have it, and people want to proceed with Mr. Zuma delivering the SONA next week, which I think would be inappropriate given the circumstances. I think that we then need some commitment that there will not be another SONA further down the line in this year, because to go to this expense twice in 1 year, I think is unnecessary and unwarranted. And so that's the viewpoint. We have written to the Speaker, and I presume she's setting this out, and I presume she will be responding to us at some stage during the day. I know this is probably an internal matter for the governing party, but you know, SONA affects all of us, and I think it would be wrong for me not to be able to put these views on the table. Thank you.
Honourable Mente.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, we also wrote to the Speaker, I think earlier this month. She responded and actually acceded to our request for a sitting on a vote of no confidence to the sitting president. And in her response, she indicated that she was still consulting with the leaders and the whips of the parties, the chief whips of the parties in the House. However, we never actually received a response in that regard. Then we wrote again, reminding her of her promise and that the sitting should be before the SONA, should be actually programmed, so it's not indicated in this particular program. Can we then get a report as to how far and when is it going to be programmed? Because the request was that it must be before the SONA. Thank you.
The Chief Whip of the ANC.
Well, let's start with the most simple one. A request made by the Speaker for a vote of no confidence is for the Speaker to schedule. No party can tell the Speaker when to schedule. This is just free education, so that we don't get carried away to an extent that we think the Constitution gives us the right to tell the Speaker when to schedule. The Constitution gives us the right to request. It is up to the Speaker, and we can assure the members here that the Speaker has indeed consulted with us. We hope that the Speaker will respond relative to the date on such a motion of no confidence. On the issue that is raised by Honourable Steenhuisen, Parliament must create certainty on its program. And indeed, we have deliberated on when we have had briefings by the administration, by the political office of the Speaker, on when the State of the Nation address will occur. And that is occurring on the 8th of February this year, next week, Thursday. So there is no change in terms of that arrangement that is now in the program of Parliament. Now, I don't know, Honourable Steenhuisen, because I know in 2008 we had a change in the president, but there was no second State of the Nation address. I know that in 2009 there was every time we have an election, there is indeed the new party mandate, etc., etc. And after the elections, we do at times have the second State of the Nation address. We are likely to have that next year, in 2019, after the general elections. From where I'm seated, I'm not aware of another State of the Nation address that has been requested by anybody this year. I'm not aware. We are only aware of one State of the Nation address, and that is next week, Thursday. Thank you.
No, thank you, Chief Whip. Honourable Steenhuisen.
Yeah, just to differentiate, if you look at the rules, there's two different things. Rule 16 and Rule 18 deal with two different processes. The one is an opening of Parliament, which is directed at the end, at the beginning session, the first session after an election. So they're two completely different things. So you have an opening of Parliament, which is a requirement, and then you have 18, which deals with the State of the Nation address. So I think we must just be careful not to conflate the two. The point I want to make is that I accept what you're saying, that's fine, and if you're going to say we're not going to have another State of the Nation address this year, then it gives me some sense of comfort. But it does not take away the fact that I think it's a complete waste for us to listen to a president deliver his priorities for the year when we know full well that it's unlikely that that president is going to remain for the full term of this year. I think that's the concern. So we all sit there. We might as well read from the book of Grimm, the Brothers Grimm, because that's essentially what the speech is going to be and mean. So thanks.
Honourable Mente, followed by the Honourable Dediza.
Okay, thanks. Now, on your free education, Chief Whip, because The reason why you are saying that is because is it because you did not consider the damning judgments against the sitting president in respect of impeachment, in respect of the state capture, the Nkandla, and now yesterday he presented his last arguments to the NPA not to be prosecuted for corruption. So I don't know, what did you look at in order for you to come to a conclusion that he is not going to be changed, or what is going to happen?
No, honourable members, will you address
So-
me as the chairperson and not each other individually, so that we can conclude
It's on the
this
basis
matter?
of his free education. So I'm trying to give him the reasons of his free education.
Okay.
And therefore, if ever they did not consider these, then they can go ahead. We'll see each other in court.
Honourable Diza.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think the concerns have been raised. Obviously, formal processes have already been undertaken in respect of requests to the Speaker, and I'm sure we will await what the Speaker says. And I'm sure in consultation with the parties, he would also get the views of the parties on this matter. I would really appreciate that we separate internal party politics from the debate of SONA. I know some of the issues may have a bearing on the general governance, and I think those has been aired in the letters that members have written to the Speaker in respect of the grounds of their request on the postponement or otherwise. And I'm sure the Speaker will duly consider that. But I think it would be unfair that we speculate about internal party dynamics, because I'm sure in each party, even where those parties may be in government or not in government, when they are their internal party businesses, in the politics, obviously, we will try, all of us, to give advice in whatever way, but I would really say, in respect of the program now, it's what we have, and the Speaker will consider and then come back to all parties on what is her view about the requests that have been made.
Now, honourable members, let me just indicate, if you look on the program on Thursday, the 8th of February, it says it's a joint sitting. Now, a joint sitting means that it was agreed to by both the presiding officers, both the Speaker and the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces. This is thus not a matter for the National Assembly Programming Committee to decide upon. It's a matter that was agreed to in a joint programming committee. The letters that were addressed to the Speaker, both from the Democratic Alliance and also from the ACDP, that's another one, is addressed to the Speaker. The Speaker must sit and discuss with the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, so that they can both agree on the way forward. And they will respond very, very soon to the letters received from those political parties. On the matter raised by the Honourable Mente from the EFF, certainly that letter was received by the Speaker, and it is receiving consideration from the Speaker. The Speaker will thus respond in writing to the leader of the EFF, under whose signature the letter appears, in terms of how that matter will be dealt with. Now, when you receive the response, it's ultimately up to the party to decide how they receive the response. But that is currently what the situation is, and that response is due. You will receive it very soon. The Honourable Chief Whip.
I think let's put the record straight. We have said, as a party here in Parliament, we can make a request to the office of the Speaker. What we can't do is to tell the Speaker how to entertain that request. That's the point we have made. That's the point we're making. That's the free education we're repeating. That we can make a request for a vote of no confidence on the President of the Republic, which indeed the Speaker is attending. And indeed, we can also give reasons why We want a vote of no confidence. The Speaker is considering that. The Speaker has consulted with the Chief Whip of the majority party, and indeed, there is a date that is being toyed about, and we believe that the Speaker will respond in due course to the party that has requested this vote of no confidence. That's all.
Honourable members, are there any other matters on the programme that you want clarity on or that you want to highlight? Honourable Singh. Honourable Steenhuisen.
We need to obviously have a process to look at how we want and whether we want to, in this first term, pilot mini plenaries. But I think that will flow from our report. When
Yes, I think that the Chief Whips in the Chief Whips Forum will deal with the matter and they will bring it to the programming committee. Chief Whip?
Just a quick one. That in fact, it's good that Honourable Steenhuisen is reminding us we had a wonderful outing and study tour in Ghana and the UK. We also want to thank the Speaker formally for allowing such a big delegation of the Chief Whips Forum to go to these two countries. We can assure this National Plenary Forum, Planning Forum, Programming Forum, and also the Office of the Speaker and all presiding officers that this two-state study tour was worth all the money that Parliament paid towards it. You will see it through the report that we'll produce. It will be a wonderful report. We were in a learning curve. We learned a lot. We also believe that those countries also learned from us through our visit there. We also want to thank the Speaker from the bottom of our heart. This was quite a big delegation, by the way. Delegation of how many? 18. About 18, including two well-acquainted staff that we got from your office, Secretary of the National Assembly. They did very well. They really conducted themselves very well and treated us like queens and kings. Again, thank you, and thank you, and thank you very much.
The Honourable Steenhuisen.
House Chair, I did say so in the Chief Whips Forum yesterday, but I don't want to be accused of saying things in closed meetings which I'm not prepared to say in public. And I think we, on behalf of all the opposition party members, and as I was reminded about saying on ANC members of the delegation, well, to thank the Chief Whip for the leadership on the delegation. I think we're, as well as the officials that helped put it together, and I echo your sentiments about the Speaker. But Chief Whip, you really led a good team, and it was, I think, a really productive session. I only wish we had done this earlier in our term. I think it would have maybe led to far more harmonious relationships in the National Assembly.
Honourable Dediza.
Thank you very much, Chair, and indeed to the team that went, we will appreciate the report. But I just thought that maybe one of the things we need to look out in dealing with the report going forward would be to look at what are those issues coming out of the report that we can take, adapting obviously in our situation, which can also inform the legacy report so that the Chief Whips Forum in the next term can actually use that as a reference point where there may be recommended changes on things that has to be done. I also would like to maybe suggest that it's something that we might need to reflect on. How does the Chief Whips Forum, as one of those committees of Parliament, even though they are not decision-making but consultative, build their capacity when necessary, so that in each term of office, it's not something that is thought of earlier, but it's something that is thought of early in the beginning. Because I take it that this tour was not just a tour, but was really a learning and development exercise. It might happen that in the coming future, not all these experienced chief whips will be there, but there may be others who are new who might need strengthening. So it's some of the issues that, as part of the planning process going forward, we need to look at, because generally, in terms of learning and development, we look at generic programs for all members of parliament. Committees would look at committee-specific, such as portfolio committees, but I think building the capacities that are part and parcel of the running of parliament, I don't think we've actually thought very carefully how we capacitate those individuals who are entrusted with such a responsibility. Because in my view, the Chief Whips Forum is really a critical committee in helping the best functioning of any legislature anywhere. Thank you very much, Chair.
Well, thank you, House Chairperson. Honourable members, the Honourable Singh.
I just want to thank Honourable Didiza for those last comments. I think it must go down in our legacy report, the importance of the Chief Whips Forum and the Chief Whips. Thank you for that. But, Chair, it's not only a learning what we've discovered, it's not only a learning and development exercise for us, but it's also a teaching exercise. Because I can tell you, Westminster does not have a Chief Whips Forum. I don't know how they operate. Everything is government's business. Here, at least, we have a Chief Whips Forum that meets regularly and talks about issues affecting Parliament. So that's something that we taught them, and I think the next time they meet, they're going to have a Chief Whips Forum. But thank you. I just want to second Honourable Steenhuisen and thank the Chief Whip and the staff that were involved in the trip.
Thank you, Honourable Singh. Are there any announcements?
Maybe that could be one of the Commonwealth programs to help, as they do their capacity buildings on standing orders on parliaments that have just gone through elections, that probably we may introduce a manual on the Chief Whips Forum and its role in Parliament.
Yeah, and a clear separation of powers between the different arms of the state. Honourable members, just one announcement. There won't be a NAPC next week, Thursday, because of the State of the Nation address. And that brings us then to closure. Thank you very much for your participation and presence. Thank you.
Honourable members, I'm sorry, can we perhaps start, and just apologize for this unforeseen delay. It's unforeseen delay. One emphasis of terrible is still has not changed, that is unforeseen delayed. So apology for that. We will get straight into